depth perception is probably one of the most critical aspects of racing. It's actually a trainable skill too, by the way. We have some drills in our app to work on different vision training, which is totally free. You can download and kind of go through them like a workout type of thing. And you can work on depth perception on the streets as well. So there's just so much you can do.
Green flag.
Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
This episode is brought to you by Deechworks Fuel Systems. Visit deechworks.com for all your fuel system needs. I'm your host, Con John Turk, and on this episode, we're going to talk about things you can do while street driving to help improve your driving on track. Joining me, professional racer turned driver coach, Rolex Daytona 24-hour winner, multi-time Sebring winner, Dion from Blaze.io. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited for the conversation today. I think it's a topic that many people don't talk about. It's one that requires a ton of nuance. So yeah, I'm excited to be here, talk shop a little bit, and hopefully help you and fellow racers go a little bit faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I've become a student of the sport, right? I hit comp school and I was like, this is cool. And as soon as comp school was over and we had our first wheel-to-wheel race, I was like, I'm on the drug of all drugs.
It's so true.
So I've done nothing but try to study all aspects, and Blaze.io, it's BLAYZE for those folks who need to find it. Blaze.io has a huge blog section. So thank you for all of that free content,
of course,
free stuff for us to read and ponder and think about. And we're actually, this is sort of based on that one article you have. It's almost 2 years old now, but it still applies today. It applies. It's one of those stand the test of times type of articles. So I appreciate that. There's other stuff.
Yeah.
How to find the limit. Wet. Why do I owe? These are all things I'm guilty of, right?
I mean, these are things like, we're all guilty of, right? It's just to what extent, the things that I coach drivers on, especially once you get closer to the more intermediate advanced amateur ranks, they're actually working on the same things that I would be working on myself. It's just to at what level of detail are you working there? And we're really fortunate. We've got a group of probably 30 to 40 of the very best coaches on the planet. And they're super gracious with their time and their willingness to share information. So most of our blog articles are, directly from those top coaches sharing their insights, and us trying to share as just much as humanly possible, because there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of it is very bad information. And especially for amateur drivers, one of the things I always preach is what you see Max Verstappen doing is not necessarily what you should be doing. There's different kind of formats there. So we wanted to kind of shed more light there, and we've just been super fortunate to be able to work with some amazing group of coaches that grace us with their time and work with thousands of amateur race car drivers. Yeah,
and you guys, I've been perusing the website for a while, but for those that don't know, you don't just do race cars, motorcycles, and karting. There's guitar and soccer up here. So you guys
many
are
more
expanding.
Coming soon.
Oh,
yeah, many more coming soon. The sort of big inspiration here is when I started Blaze, it was actually under a different company name. It was called Racers 360 at the time, and the whole premise was, I retired from racing in 2018. Started getting more active. At the time, I was driving for Audi, and they sent me out to a lot of amateur racing clubs and stuff like that. And what I just found was the local coach, instructor would often be coaching the exact opposite of what I would coach. So it kind of came to like, well, why are people learning from from those that I wouldn't really consider should be teaching. And at the same time, many of my peers that were coaches were choosing not to coach because the business model of coaching was pretty flawed. So it was sort of like, how do you create better accessibility to learn personally from great coaches? I think personalization is a huge part of this. And do it in a way that helps coaches scale their business and kind of earn more opportunities to work when they want, have better lifetime, kind of life hours, work-life balance. But it turns out that's not a racing problem. It turns out that's a problem that exists across all sports, arts, music, dance, and even business. So we're in the process now of kind of scaling that out. We've got golf launching here in a few weeks, more instruments coming online. So lots more coming, which just helps. At the end of the day, it actually helps us increase the quality of the platform, the quality of the coaches, which will also make it a better platform for race car drivers as well.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, it's your format is completely different from other folks. Your pricing format is earned credits, spend your credits as you want. So you're buying into the ecosystem, and it has suggestions. I think like the cheapest one, the suggestion was, I can't remember whether it was like 4 or 5 coachings, individual,
which ends up being like $50 a month type of thing,
right?
Ballpark, yeah,
right, in the ballpark.
It's super affordable, yeah, super affordable. And the whole adage here is, it's not, you're not just doing a one-off lesson with a coach. You're building a relationship with them where they get to know you. You're chat messaging with them. They're sending you follow-up practice plans. When you send in your next video, they refer back to the previous videos so that you guys continue to grow together. Coaching is something that you have to build a relationship with the coach. They have to be able to understand you. How do you take my coaching and put it into practice? And then how do I see that? How do I adjust my coaching off of that? So we make this really affordable. We highly curate every coach. So every coach on our platform, I personally go and look not just for communication styles, but also for like the depth of their experience and how they're going about giving coaching. It's not just the what are you doing wrong or right. It's the, well, why is it wrong or right? And then if it is wrong, how do you actually fix it? And every one of our coaches have to hit all 3 of those things. And that's what a great coach does. So highly created coaches, done in a format to where it's flexible. So no matter what you're racing, no matter what level you're at, like we work with drivers that have never even hit track before. We work with drivers that are trying to win the SCCA runoffs and, Spec MX5, right? The most competitive field there, one of them. So coaches scale up or down to where you are. And that's what personalization allows us to do. If you have, video from any video system, data from any data system, your coach can work with you. If you're just, doing DE, great. Or if you're doing wheel-to-wheel racing and you want racecraft notes as well as speed notes, all of this is super flexible and tailored to kind of meet you where you are.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I happen to be one of the hard-headed drivers in the paddock. There's only a few.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Well, so building that relationship and the model that you have, I believe, would help do that, will help you. You build that relationship, and then your coaches will be able to help tailor it. Because you could tell me all day, I need you to go 50 feet deeper into turn 1. And then I need you to brake 10% less pressure. Okay. Mm-hmm. But getting me to apply it is the problem, right? So
100%.
If you build the rapport, if you have that rapport with your coach, you're more likely to get more results. And I think that's important. So,
and look, every driver is a little bit different there. There's given this exact example, there's 2 drivers I'm working with right now that are working on very similar problems. If you kind of grossly oversimplify and generalize, amateur race car drivers, what typically ends up happening is they overslow corner entries, get on throttle too early, jack up weight transfer. Now, why you overslow corner entries is either kind of one of 3 problems. It's braking too early, it's not the right brake pressure for the corner type, or it is sort of carrying the brakes too deep into the corner, actually trail braking too much. Those are kind of like 3 core things. So like one driver actually at Summit Point, Maine is where we're focused on. I gave 2 drivers pretty much very similar notes. Directly after that, one driver went about 2.1 seconds faster. The other driver didn't go faster at all. And, she's been sort of struggling over the last bit where she'll make a change, but it doesn't result into a faster lap time. And typically what ends up happening there with a driver like that, and this is a very common thing where you improve one technique, but a technique that you were good at before actually suffers because of that, because your mind's focused over here. And she kind of has been dealing with this for the last 6 months. So we were actually just going back and forth through our chat messaging tool where I was supplying her with, got it, we're struggling with this. Let's try, like, I've got 3 different drills, because she's a DE driver, so she has, kind of time and sessions to try drills, where it's like, throw the lap time out of the equation, but we're going to try one of these 3 different things, right? And 1 week we're going to focus on one of these, and then we're kind of merge it back to the driving. And now it's less a coaching session. It's more like, hey, I'm here to figure this out with you. And there's certain things that we can, if you get stuck at this block, okay, let's get our mind completely out of that system. Let's let ourselves have the freedom to try things, and that's where the drills come in. So it's sort of like this really free-flowing kind of thing where you can have this dynamic rapport, where my job's not just how do you go faster, it's how are we actually going to make the change to get there. And I think that's what really makes a coach and kind of separates them from instructors or your buddy that just knows how to go fast.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into this article a little bit. I don't know if you have it pulled up. I have it pulled up for me on my side, but
yeah, go for it.
So first it leads off with vision on the street. And it talks about the eyes up philosophy that everybody starts to, their focus will start to tunnel a little bit. And I think I want to caveat all of this with, you're driving on the street, be safe. These aren't like,
I'm not saying go street racing. Let me be really clear with that.
Correct. Me either, right? Nobody's saying that, right? But these are, and not only do I think this article will stand the test of time, but I think it can help any driver at any level, because I think even the higher you go, you may forget some of these basics or need to resharpen your basics.
Totally.
Maybe it's not completely dull, but maybe it's just off enough that it's causing a problem in other places. But so you guys, you start off with the eyes up habit while driving. Can you explain how to do it on the street that may help us?
Yeah, totally. Well, look, first off, I can't tell you how many times that I'll even hop back in a car. This was still like while I was competing professionally, where things felt fast, and I was like, "Oh crap! Okay, Dion, like take a breath, eyes up." So like it's at every level, right? And I guarantee you, even Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen will have to tell themselves that every once in a while, right? So the way that I would, on this, the premise of this article was, while driving normally on the streets, what are some small things that you can do that sort of, I would say the right word is probably reinforce good technique on the track. It's probably how I would look at it. So when it comes to vision, there's a couple different areas. One would be, let's say you're just like highway driving, making sure, it's so easy to get lazy and just look at the rear bumper of the car in front of you. So this is especially true for those like racetrack, like people that are more doing wheel-to-wheel racing on that highway, looking through the car in front of you, 4 or 5 cars in front, right? That's one. But really the more interesting way to do this or think about it is if you're in a car and you have certain, I'm going to use the word corners, but like, let's say you have a route of driving that you know relatively well, and hopefully it's got some turns involved in there, right? The way that I would look at this is, on these turns, I would be wanting to practice what I would call my eye timing and what my reference points are in those turns, just like I would do on a racetrack. So on a racetrack, and this article goes a little bit less into that, but we have plenty of other articles that go much deeper into vision. We have 5 reference points in every corner. Every corner has these 5 reference points. It has your initial brake point, has your turn-in point. It has what we call the minimum speed point of the corner. It has, and this is going to be like 2 weird terminologies here from most of us. We then have our entry apex and our exit apex. So what the heck is an entry apex and exit apex? The entry apex is what you would all traditionally call your apex of the corner, right? Where you get to the closest side of the inside. we like to introduce a term of exit apex. And essentially the reason we say that is if I go and ask the typical driver, like pull up any corner, I say like, hey, where do you apex? The rough answer there would be something along the lines of like, oh, it's like right about mid curb, like that third red stripe. Now, if I ask that same driver, great, same corner, where do you exit? Typically, I would just hear something along the lines like, oh, I would use the exit curb. I'm like, well, that exit curb is like 7 car lengths long. Like, where on the exit curb do you get all the way out wide? So the term exit apex is just shifting the reference of our exit to be a very specific point, similar to our entry, our traditional apex, our entry apex. So on the street, what I would be doing is in those corners, establish my 5 reference points, right? And then work off of my eye timing of when do I shift my vision from one point to the next. And this is one of the hardest parts about driving because we all know your eyes can be too low. But what's not often spoken about is your eyes can be too far forward as well. Now, I give a really crude example here. That's not the best analogy, but it's the best analogy I could really kind of give to make a point. It's like I have a water bottle in front of me here. And let's say I'm going to reach for this water bottle. If I start reaching for this water bottle and I look up too early, well, I don't grab the water bottle. My hand misses it, right? But at the same time, I don't need my eyes looking at the water bottle until my hand grabs it. So the last one, it's like, this would be eyes too low where I'm watching my hand grab the water bottle. But the first example where I look away too early and my hand misses the water bottle, that's your eyes too far up. So what we subconsciously do is we look at our hand reaching for the bottle, and once we see it on the right trajectory, then we can look away, right? Mm-hmm. And that's eye timing. So the analogy of how that relates back to the racetrack is the timing of where you shift your vision from one reference point to the next is related to the sort of the car orientation to that reference point. So like I want to be looking at the apex point until I have the right trajectory, until I have the car oriented to where I know I'm going to hit that apex point. That's when I pick my eyes up to the next reference point. And those are the things that you can really start to practice on the streets is what are my reference points? What's my timing to those reference points? Combine that with eyes up on the highway. So hopefully that was not too much, but that's kind of how I think about it.
No, that's great. And it's super important. Usually if somebody asks me where my exit is, I'm like, wherever the car goes after I'm done with the apex, right? Like
yeah.
Out there.
Yeah. Out there, right? And one of the biggest differences, by the way, between pro drivers and amateur drivers, and this is a gross oversimplification, right? This isn't true for every corner, but for most corners. They pick a hairpin corner that leads onto a straightaway. Mm-hmm. What you're going to find often is the pro driver gets out all the way wide earlier on the exit curb. And the amateur driver actually gets their hand straight. Earlier. I don't know why I've got fireworks going off in the background of this call. But gets their hand straight earlier. So the pro driver still has more steering input as they get out to the exit curb. But they get out to the exit curb earlier, which means as they start to accelerate, the pro driver is more aggressive with opening that steering wheel up, which allows us to get back to full throttle earlier. And that's because we've established our exit reference point. We have a very specific point we look at.
And when you open your hands earlier, you save your tires longer.
Yeah. 100%. It's, speed and sort of tire wear. The one thing I didn't talk about on the streets, which is another thing that you could do vision-wise, it's just your peripheral vision, right? Working on like kind of acknowledging your kind of side mirrors where cars are around you, just try and really use your peripheral vision, which is massive in sort of racing. There's another thing that you can go through so much here. Another thing you can work on is your depth perception. Right, depth perception is probably one of the most critical aspects of racing. It's actually a trainable skill too. By the way, we have some drills in our app to work on different vision training, which is totally free. You can download it and kind of go through them like a workout type of thing. And you can work on depth perception on the streets as well. So there's just so much you can do.
Yeah. So some of the stuff that I know I work on is my mirror pattern. So the pattern I use to look at my mirrors before I take a turn. So I know what my pattern is depending on my placement on track and the direction the turn is. And so when I'm driving by myself and I'm just doing my thing, I'm trying to practice that. Another thing, we've mentioned it, so it's the next part of the article says race starts, and that's where you were really talking about looking through, so you could see the when the leaders are actually accelerating. Especially, it's important because there's a lot of tracks where you don't get to see the start. You won't see the flag. There's wings in the way. There's cars in the way. Everything is in the way, right? And I think that's really important. Yep. But one thing I learned growing up in the Washington, D.C. area, riding motorcycles, was you talked about like paying attention to the traffic around you and your peripherals, learning behavior patterns. So I drive my car like I ride in my motorcycle, but I'm always looking around, and I'm, 3 car lengths and 1 lane over. I'm like, that guy's going to change lanes to the left, Yeah,
100%.
And just trying to get used to predicting that behavior. I think that's super helpful on the racetrack. I know we can be a little unpredictable when racing because we're always shooting gaps and doing these things, but it's sort of like a mindset to get into. Start thinking about the people you're driving around, and that starts on the street, and you can apply it when you're on track too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the most common coaching sort of instances that I have on this with a lot of the kind of racecraft coaching I'll give to people is the terms that I use is, like, you've got to be able to have sort of empathy for what a car or driver in front of you is likely doing and thinking, right? And very often, let's say you're in a 3-car train. Let's say you're the 3rd car, so you're last. You're trying to overtake the car right in front of you. But if it's a 3-car train, they are very likely vision forward, focus on the car in front of you. So they are less likely to know that you're maybe trying to overtake them or where you are. So in those areas, I'm even more conservative of, showing the nose, making sure I get all the way alongside them. I assume that they don't see me. Now, I will say anytime that I come and do any form of amateur racing, especially like if I did the NASA 25 hours, I would have a default assumption that they have no clue I'm there. And that was my default assumption, especially then, but it gets amplified when there's multi-class racing. There's maybe 3 or 4 cars in one spot. And I think you can kind of learn that and see that on the streets and start to get a feel for like who sees me, how do they adjust, and having that empathy for what are others most likely to be thinking.
Yeah, it's super important. If you drive that way on the street, you're less likely to be surprised by folks coming, passing people in traffic.
You'll be safer, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And that was part of while riding motorcycles in congested traffic, I know they're not looking for me, right? So,
yeah.
And now my daily commuter is a little Honda Fit. They don't see this black Honda Fit sitting in the lane, even with daytime runners. Maybe they're not even looking. That's what happens, right? Even on the track, maybe they're not looking. They're so focused ahead, especially in the trains, right? So you're not wrong 100%. There. Yeah, for sure. One thing you talked about in this article is trail braking on the streets. When is a good time to practice that trail braking?
So I know I probably should expand on this. I think it's also a great opportunity to work on your foot dexterity. So there's 2 aspects of this. Interesting enough, this is going to sound a bit weird. You're not going to trail brake on the streets to like rotate the car, right? Like the reason why you trail brake on a racetrack is rotation to keep weight on the front end to get the car to turn because you're at the limit. That's not I'm not saying you're at the limit on the streets trail braking to get the thing to rotate around the corner. But getting this really maps back to foot dexterity and being able to feel it. So there's 2 areas here. One would be, and again, caveat doing this safely. I'm not saying threshold braking to a stoplight or a stop sign. Pick an early brake zone into one of those things, right? And the way that I like to actually do this is when I'm coming to a stop sign, if you do this right, this is totally possible. Your initial hit of the brake should be the heaviest. And then as the car is slowing down at the stop sign, you should actually be getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter on the brakes so that when you arrive at that stop sign, you have like the tiniest bit of brake on. And yes, you could do that on a automatic car as well. That's not just for manuals. Even with that idle speed, this is totally possible. So doing that into traffic lights, into stop signs, is a great way to just practice on every corner, on every racetrack, except for a very few minority. The initial hit of the brakes is always going to be the hardest relative pressure in that brake zone. Doesn't matter how hard the pressure should be in that brake zone, whether it's a 1 out of 10 in terms of pressure or a 10 out of 10 in terms of pressure, you always want that peak brake pressure coming early and then releasing off. Again, there's exceptions to the rules, but those are very, very, very rare. So practicing peak brake pressure coming earlier and then having that nice trail off and not adding brake pressure back is a great way to reinforce that habit for street driving. The other aspect of this as well is being able to get a better feel for light brake pressure on the pedal. So if you're trying to learn left foot braking, it's a great thing for that. But even if you're just trying to get better at right foot braking, one of the things that I've learned since I actually wrote this article was another area of separation that pro drivers have from, let's say, good amateur drivers is light brake zones. So like turn 2 at Willow Springs, I was out kind of last year driving a TCR car with somebody, and we were, turn 2 is a super light brake zone. It's like a 2 out of 10 in terms of pressure. And the driver I was working with was like, yeah, man, like I feel like I'm braking really, really light into this corner. When we looked at our pressures, he had double the pressure that I had. Now, he was right there with me in every threshold braking corner, but he couldn't hit the brake pedal light enough, right? And it was just his feel of the pedal, being able to use your core muscles to control your leg to be able to feel that. So the other aspect here is on the streets, knowing the turn you're entering, like if you're kind of have some winding roads, let's say, or even here I have a left-hand turn onto my street into my home. I play around here where I try to think about, okay, should this be an exit speed corner or an entry speed corner? And based off of that, where should my minimum speed come? And then how, like, if this was a racetrack, how much brake pressure should I use for this corner? Would it be a threshold braking corner or would it be light? And it just so happens this corner would be a light one because it kind of has this like right-hander into a left-hander. So I kind of think about the right brake pressure for the turn I'm entering. And, again, I'm driving 25 miles an hour here, right? But I'm just kind of practicing that light brake pressure, that feel, having the peak brake pressure come earlier in the corner. So all of those things, if you're just sort of thinking about it, like those are great things to sort of reinforce while you're street driving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't promote the practice your left foot braking on the street before you get to the racetrack. I can't promote that enough because just don't do it with your wife in the car. I think I scared her the first time I did it, but that muscle memory is in your other leg. It is not in the left leg. You need to learn to modulate that leg. It's in a gross motor, like my left leg, it's clutch, right? It's gross motor, very little fine motor to get a clutch going, right? Not like a brake, not like you want to apply it, especially when you have left foot braking applications. So I think it's a huge thing. And just be ready to make mistakes. And so don't do it in traffic. Just do it on a side street on your way home somewhere and start easing into it. I think that's one of the best ways to learn how to left foot brake. I know fast people who don't left foot brake at all. And then I know that I made changes to my car where I think it behooves me to left foot brake now. Whereas before it didn't. But between my gearbox setup and carrying different speeds and how the car likes to rotate, I need to do it, I think. So started practicing.
It comes down to driver preference. Some of the fastest teammates I ever had, Spencer Pompelli, Ronnie Rast, were right foot breakers at the time. I personally am a left foot breaker. I'm just better at it. So it comes down to more personal preference than anything else. You could be fast either way. So I like left foot braking. I think the other part of this that I don't think I wrote about in that article because I've learned more about it since is actually core engagement. So on the racetrack here, you especially at turn-in and brake release, you want your core engaged, and like I am controlling my leg more with my core. I'm turning the car in more with my core, and that actually gets you a better feel for the car. Like if you completely turn your core off, and you're turning just with your arms, you don't have the same finite movements. Your core does a great job at these kind of fine motor skills, which is when you're thinking about turn-in points and brake release points is sort of the first 5%, last 5% of input. So this is really where weight transfer starts to happen. It becomes a really critical thing. Now, most people don't talk about it. You can actually work on core engagement on the street cars, or street drive. I'm not saying I'm flexing my abs. I'm just engaging that core, and that helps control, my shoulder movements through the steering wheel, my leg movements, making sure that that's engaged is another thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we all run in containment seats. Well, those of us racing, we race in containment seats, and we have, harnesses on and stuff like that. If you're not in that, it's even more critical. When you're in a 3-point, street seat belt in a street seat, you'll definitely see the benefit over the long run, especially like a longer session, like a 40-minute session. If you start engaging that way, it helps everything stay a little bit tighter and uses a little bit less energy in some of your extremities. So that's great advice. One of the other sections of this is it talks about high speed corners, and you say that's where they see anxiety in the driver, and then that's where their eyes start to shift and stuff. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, I think this is probably one of the more harder ones to work on streets, because we're never taking corners that fast to where anxiety comes up. But if you look at the big corners in motorsports, you think turn 12 at Road Atlanta, the kink at Road America, turn 8 at Thunder Hill could be one of those. These high speed, high commitment corners. Most drivers have anxiety leading up to those, and anxiety causes us, because fight or flight, to do two things. One is grip the steering wheel a little tighter. Two is our eyes come down. The exact things you don't want to do in those corners. Now, on the street, there's every once in a while you can come through these like free-flowing, higher speed corners. You can kind of think about these as like some off and on ramps on highways that are kind of like longer duration, right? Just checking in, like, where are my eyes on those corners? What are my hands doing? Are they relaxed on the steering wheel? So, like, this one is probably one of the weaker ones here in the article. It's harder to really get that much benefit because you're not having the same anxiety. But it's just something to have in the back of your mind to check in on, and just practice that eye timing, practice that breathing into the corner, letting the car roll, like kind of like coast in, roll into the corner, right? Those are things that it can still help on the streets.
Yeah, and so reading that portion also made me think about how, and you talked about the grip increasing, but it also reminds me to worry about my hand placement. I've tried to spend the last 2 years not shuffle steering on track.
Awesome. And to anyone out there that's about to say, I have to shuffle steer, I'm going to call bullshit. There's one corner I've ever had to shuffle steer through, and that was with the hairpin at Long Beach. But even then, it was barely, and that's a tight corner.
Right.
If you're having to shuffle steer, it's because your seat is not in the right point.
Right. But on the street, specifically in high-speed corners, if you find yourself moving your hands around the wheel to take that corner, exit ramps are perfect, right? There's absolutely zero reason to move your hands. Stop. Because
love that. That's a great call out.
Pattern of behavior that you're going to do it on track, and you don't need to do it there either. Yes, turning into the grocery store, parking space. Different story. Slow stuff, sure, I get it. But when we're on track, we don't need to shift our hands because we're shifting the yaw of the chassis. So
do you want me to actually kind of break down a little bit on my perspective here? Because I know that I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm like someone's mom nagging at them for shuffle steering. A lot of people are like I get it, but like it does the job. Let me break down like why it's so important.
Absolutely.
There's a few different reasons, but here's the core reason why. And it comes down to in the most critical moment, let's say it's at quarter entry, corner exit, where you get some oversteer in the car and you need to make a correction. When your hands are at 9 and 3 o'clock, it gives you two advantages. One, you actually know where on the steering angle, kind of input you are. Two, you're positioned, like your shoulders, your arms are positioned to make micro adjustments. When you start to shuffle steer, what typically happens is you move one hand up on the steering wheel, which takes the shoulder out of the seat. So now you have a much larger pivot point for one. So it's much harder to make small adjustments, which can lead to overcorrections when it comes to a big slide, which typically puts you in the wall, right? So one is you can't make micro adjustments. You tend to overcorrect in an oversteer moment, puts you in the wall. Two, and I see this happen all the time, is when you shuffle steer, and that oversteer moment happens, the way that oversteer works is you've got to sort of counter steer into it, and it's a spring, right? So the outside tires are going to load. You're going to wait for that spring to pop back the other way. So you counter steer, and then I'm going to be ready to unwind that counter steer, correct the other way. The car's going to pause again, and I've got to get my hands straight. But now, if I've shuffled my hands, I don't necessarily know where straight is anymore when the oh shit moment happens, right? It's one thing when everything's kind of like easy peasy and I'm cruising, but when the oh shit moment happens and I've got to be able to counter steer, hit the pause, get my hands straight, and get ready to then correct the other direction, you kind of lose sight of that, and that's how you kind of overcorrecting, undercorrecting puts you in the wall as well. So for me, it comes down to, are you going to be faster without counter steering? Yes. But more importantly, you're going to actually save the car more as you start to go faster. So there's multiple reasons to do it. The core one is to not crash.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm telling you, it will happen when you least need it to happen. It will happen at
Yes.
the worst timing, right? So if you start to get into this behavior, and I think that's what the article is all about, right? There's a list of behaviors. There's some things we've added in this podcast. There's a list of behaviors that you need to slowly reinforce as you street drive. Where are your eyes? Get into this mindset of where are the people around me? What are they going to do? Where am I looking? Where should I be looking? That's big. That's always the key, right? I know where I'm looking. I see it over there. Okay, but where should I really be looking? But it all comes together and it helps you, and it should be a similar mindset to when you go out on track, right? Whether you're in DE or whether you're wheel to wheel. DE people, you need to be just as predictable, right? You need to be able to predict those guys. Rarely do those things happen where there's a DE on DE violence, because it's not wheel to wheel. It's super rare, but I think it's because they back off, and they back off early. I get it. But it still behooves you to start practicing it in DEs. Start trying 100%. To predict
and all the rest of it.
Yep.
Still. Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think the reality here is we've all picked a sport where practice is hard, right? We don't get that many reps out there. It's expensive to do. So any opportunity you've got to try and replicate and try to get practice reps in is super critical. So it's not like we can go just backyard to the football around and get 100 reps in. It's just not the reality. In fact, if you think about it, let's say you're going to a DE weekend at VIR, and let's see, you get 5 sessions a day. It's a 20-minute session. It's a 2.5 minute lap. You include traffic. In reality, you might only get like 15 good practice reps of clean driving through turn 3. Imagine any other sport where you only get 15 reps of practice and you'd be like, well, of course it's going to take me a long time to make the improvement. So this is just a way to try and get additional practice reps out there. Sure, it's not one-to-one. It won't be ideal, won't be perfect, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and you're not training. There's no replication for NASCAR bend at any street around me, right? But what I can do is teach myself, hard on the initial brake, ease out as the mew of the brake pad kicks in, right? start turning in, looking where I need to be, light with my hands. Where are my hands placed? Am I opening up the wheel? Am I exiting where I want to exit? All of those things, you can do that on the street. That way, that mental repetition occurs while you're doing it in turn 3, so you can maximize those 15 reps you're about to get.
100%. 100%.
Awesome. Do you have anything else we should cover with street driving?
I mean, I think we probably got kind of everything down here that I can think of off the top of my head here. Yeah, look, I think it's just at a high level, if you can just find a route that has some corners that you know, and just thinking through like, okay, if this was a racetrack, you know, what would my reference points be? What is my priority in this corner? Is it an entry speed corner or is it an exit speed corner? Based off of that, where do I want my minimum speed and my initial throttle application point to come? What should my brake pressure be in this corner? Like relative, threshold braking corner or lighter brake zone corner. And then just sort of like practicing those at slow speeds. And by the way, like you could just make up a scribble map of corners and I could tell you with 95% accuracy, okay, that's an entry speed corner, exit speed corner. I want my minimum speed coming here. Based off of that, probably a lighter brake zone or a threshold braking zone. Just like all of that's pretty fundamental, basic stuff. Being able to just get practice at recognizing and thinking about that and implementing that will just help you when it's going to translate back to the racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. I found out, well, I was a subscriber, but YouTube algorithms are terrible. Because you've put out you put out something last month, it looks like, on your YouTube, but it didn't come across my feed. So that's weird. But
we don't post on YouTube that much. We typically post our own blog, but I'm trying to, like, we have live member calls twice a month where there's like a topic of the month and, we'll go deep dive with Ken Hill and Colin Mullen that lead them on different topics, anything from like how to use sim racing to setup to the mental to whatever it might be, driving in the wet when using data was like last month. And I try to clip out some of those, insights to post on YouTube every once in a while. So we'll try to be doing a little bit more here over the next year or so.
Yeah. And some of the articles you've written, there's also things related as how to trail brake is on here. 5 important sim drills, things like that. So also,
I think we've written about pretty much everything we can. We also have, this is for members only, but I think we have about 70 to 80 video racetrack guides there. We have almost every track in the US. I think we've got to add like Eagles Canyon. We've got to add almost anywhere you go, you can go to our search bar and type in the track name and you'll find not just a video track guide, which typically is from me or one of the coaches going corner by corner, 20-minute video, kind of what to focus on. We also have approved onboard videos. So things that we think are good onboard videos for you to study, because I think that's a hard thing. You go to YouTube, you type in the track name, and most of the time you find a video of some driver on the track and you have no clue, for the most part, is this driver any good? If they are good, they're typically not in a car that's close to yours. So like, how should I know which one to study? We've kind of curated that list down and have some articles for those as well on the website. So we have a pretty broad range of things there.
Okay, so completely out of left field. Do you have Ozark International?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You do? Okay.
Absolutely. We have Ozarks.
So, some of you guys who plan on going to NASA Nationals this year better sign up, become a member, and start getting your research.
That is a gnarly, hard racetrack.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. The rumor is they say the best sim driver will win, but we'll see.
Interesting.
We'll see.
We shall see.
Well, Dion, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. It's Blaze.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always welcome back. I remember I didn't get coaching from you, but some guys in the paddock were reviewing coaching from old Racer 360. So I know it works because they were improving immediately. So. And it's on my bucket list for this year is to get coaching. So we'll see. I have to 100%. Figure out how to get it off my Garmin easily trackside.
we've got some exciting things coming there that I can't talk about yet, but it'll be very easy to do, probably by the end of next year or so.
Okay.
But for now, if you have any questions, like we actually have articles as well on like, how do I download a video off of the Garmin Catalyst and upload it to us? Or how do I do that from AIM? Or how do I do that from a GoPro? But also, look, we're part of the community. We're racers. We love racing. We love helping others out. So if there's anything we can do to help, whether it's how do I go faster, to what class should I be looking at driving next year, to set up questions, to just, I had an incident and I need help, like reach out to us, come to our website, we have a support chat, send us a message, or, if you're inclined to really want to go faster, I can't recommend having a personal coach. At the end of the day, personalization and like, what are you doing right and wrong? What are the next areas of focus? How do you make those changes for you in your car and your situation, is really critical. And that's whether that's with us or working with any great coach. There's plenty of fantastic coaches. And if you can work with one in person, that's phenomenal. But if you're looking for a more kind of flexible, easier way to do that, I think we have a great platform for it. And if we can just be helpful, don't hesitate to reach out. Like that's what we're here to do and love to do as well.
Yeah. And one thing is the postseason is upon us, right? We're off working in the garage. Now, if you've got your last couple of events and you're like, oh, I'm working on the car, but how am I really going to get faster next year? Pull that stuff and send it to you guys. I'm sure.
Yeah. And look, we do a lot of off-season plans for drivers as well. So there's, you can send your video, you can schedule live calls with your coach. So a lot of the drivers that I'm working with is, hey, let's do a summarization of last year. Let's talk about next year. Like, what are the adjustments we're kind of making pre-weekend, post-weekend, and then also throughout the off season, like, what do we want to be doing so that we can not be rusty when things hit? So if you've got a sim, okay, what should we be doing on the sim? If you don't have a sim, what else can we be doing to kind of build towards next year? So it's not like through the off season, we kind of turn off and just wait for next year. A big part of this is also kind of off season plans, keeping you up to date and just sort of having someone there to hold you accountable and kind of think of this like an athlete, which is really important, no matter what level and what type of racing you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You should be training. You don't just work on the car and get fat in the holidays. Like, you need to be sharp the whole time,
and while having fun, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, we all do this because we're passionate about it. We want to have fun with it. So I don't want it to come across like, we're giving you a lot of homework and yelling at you. Like, that's not the no, it's a fun thing to do.
Right. We're not being rigid. We're just reminding you, hey, don't relax too much. Enjoy the family time. Mm-hmm. Take effective steps for your race programs in the off season. Getting coaching is one of them, and look forward to next year, because the off season's way shorter than you think it is anyway. So.
Always. It's that first weekend comes up and you're always thrashing on the car to try to get it ready, and then you like realize, man, I haven't even done any visualization. I don't even haven't thought about it. I'm just like, oh, I'm here now, right? And the whole first weekend just turns into just try to get back to where you were before.
Right, absolutely. Well, Dion, I really appreciate it, sir. That's BL.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's BLAYZE.io is their website.
You got it.
In your social medias, do you know those off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think they're all just at Blaze Coaching, BLAYZE Coaching. And then my personal ones are at Dion VMR. So reach out to us, and whatever we can do to help, we're here.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.